Get started. Welcome, Dr. Ken Harris. So great to see you. It's been several years since we've actually seen one another, but it's great to see you here on Zoom. I hope this finds you well. I know that you are based in New Jersey, one of the epicenters of the COVID-19 virus. And, before we jump into the interview, how are things going for you?
Things are going well personally. I mean, we're all, people keep saying we're all in this together. You hear that a lot. We're all in the same boat, but we're all not in the same part of the storm. And I've been blessed. I mean, it has rained on me a little bit. I lost money in the market and blah, blah, blah. But people have lost their lives. People have lost their domiciles where they live. They lost their way of supporting themselves. So there's a lot of suffering going on in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. And the other day I was watching the news, which I don't watch and I don't recommend too often, but I had a tremendous wave of grief come over me, almost to the point of crying, seeing those food lines and how the invisible people now are showing up. They're not invisible anymore in our culture. So I'm hoping that something major shifts after this pandemic stops, that we start to see each other and help one another.
Well, it's glad to see you well, and thank you for sharing. And I agree with you. I think that we are certainly living in unprecedented times. And part of the reason why I'm doing this series is to sprinkle some inspiration and hope out there. And I know that we could talk for hours and hours about your story and all the different different miracles that have happened in your life. We'll talk a little bit about that today, and certainly people will learn more if they choose to read your book, Synchronicity. But let's get started. I would love to do an introduction of who you are, so for the listeners out there, they know who you are and such an amazing person. Dr. Kenneth Harris, or Dr. Ken Harris, I should say, is a chiropractor and founder of Waldwick Wellness Center in New Jersey. This was a multi-doctor facility providing all natural health and wellness care for over 45 years. Amazing. You are a pioneer in holistic healing, which you first established back in 1974. And in 1993, you established the Mind Body Wellness Education Center, dedicated to the exploration, understanding, and promotion of mind-body-spirit connection. As an educator, lecturer, presenter, author, keynote speaker, you, Dr. Harris, has facilitated numerous seminars and workshops that touch the heart and soul. And you speak on the subject of spirituality, personal development, mindfulness, and natural health. I cannot thank you enough for being here today to share your inspiration, your wisdom for all that choose to listen to this interview. I'd like to get started by asking you, what is synchronicity?
Well, I'm gonna read from the foreword of my book. My best buddy wrote the foreword. He's a physician in California. His name is Dr. Habib Siddiqui, who himself wrote a bestseller called The Clarity Cleanse. And I met him through Synchronicity. And as Synchronicity would have it, he called me up. He said, what's going on, Ken? I said, I just wrote a book. And he offered graciously to write the foreword to my book. So let me read what he says, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So on the foreword, it says, synchronicity happens when two things having a shared purpose or function come together at the same time in order for a particular condition or outcome to be achieved. So in layman's terms, we call them coincidences. A synchronicity seems to be a coincidence, which has an element of randomness to it. But I believe synchronicities are not coincidental. They're not random. They're not mathematical. Many times they're actually prearranged, the meetings of the right person at the right time, at the right place, at different junctures in your own life path. When you're at a decision point, you'll meet someone who will help you make that decision by offering you some advice, many times what to do next, and many times what not to do next. So I've come to discover there are actually 7 different types of synchronicities, or what we call coincidences. Oftentimes when they happen, Jennifer, we're not aware in the moment immediately that we're going to connect these dots and the significance about these so-called chance meetings. But synchronicity is not in any way chance at all, in my opinion.
I totally agree. And, I'd like to briefly share our synchronicity story and how we met. And, what's interesting for me is that you ended up helping me have a big breakthrough in my life at a really pivotal point in my life. So I'm sure you remember, I met you at Dr. Deborah Sandella's, I think it was Releasing the Inner Magician, if I remember correctly. It was a weekend course in Cropalo out in the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts. And it had been several months since I had the experience of being very close to the first explosion at the Boston Marathon bombings, where my life was shattered in an instant, actually. And I was at this retreat in healing course to really discover and unleash the inner magician in me. And I remember distinctly being paired with you after an exercise that Dr. Deb had walked us through. And in that exchange, all in the beginning, it wasn't pleasant for me. And yet it turned out to be a big breakthrough for me, because you were, speaking your truth and your wisdom. And for me, it was hard for me to hear what you had said at that moment. And the breakthrough came later when I shared more, emotionally of what that, meant for me. My old way of being would have been to run out of the room and possibly, not even come back in. And something had me come face my own fears. So sometimes we have this illusion, or sometimes I have the illusion that people are out to get me. And after going through that experience of a terrorist attack, I had to deal with that. And I remember coming back, and Dr. Deb and you and I just, we had this beautiful transformative experience. And I'll let you speak to your experience of it. But I know for me, it was a pivotal point in my learning to trust myself, learning to speak my truth, and coming from a place of love and compassion for all that is. And I'm truly grateful to you for being that synchronous moment in my life.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the pain you were in. I mean, you were at a pivot point, like you said. You could have gone up or you could have gone down based on what had happened to you. And I remember offering help to you. I felt your pain, and I really reached out to you, but you didn't perceive it originally as help. As a matter of fact, I remember you were very clear about what you said to me, and I just had to let it hit, fall, and not take it personal.
Yeah.
When you rejected the help in many, what I perceived it was a rejection, and I was a little puzzled, because I was asking myself, she's not seeing this as a means of help. She's seeing this as a means of attack in some way. But we got through it. Deb was an excellent facilitator. And I met her through Synchronicity. Deb and I met at a healing conference many years prior, because I had spoken, and she came over to me, and she was in her own journey. She hadn't really written her books yet. She hadn't gone to Australia. And 7 years later, she invites me to go to Machu Picchu with her. After I had watched the whole special about it the night before, and I said to my wife, Judith, it's in the book. I declared, I'm going to go to this place, Machu Picchu, and Deb sends me an email the very next morning inviting me to go. And I registered immediately, because I took that as a sign from the universe that this was an affirmation I should go to this place called Machu Picchu. And it was a magical time with her. There were 16 of us. We climbed the mountain, and it changed. There was a pivotal point for me in my life. So Deb and I and you are definitely connected, and we're still connected.
Absolutely. No, and I think, really what I want to speak to here is that synchronicity can look different ways. And you talked about, and you talk about it in your book, you categorize it in 7 different ways. Can you enlighten us on what that is?
Yeah, I've come to discover over the course of the last 20 or 25 years, that these coincidences are not all the same. What we call coincidence. There's different reasons why we meet certain people at different points in our time, why certain things happen to us. So the 7 types of synchronicity are the following: precursors, deviations, expansions, messenger, manifestation, opportunity, and some of them appear to be synchronistic, but they're really artificial. They have no deeper meaning to them. They are, in fact, just, oh, I wonder why that happened, but we never make a connection. So the ones that are the most, I think, the most impacting is when you're at a decision point and you don't know which way to go. You're right at the road less traveled point. What is it, Robert Frost?
Yeah.
You come to the junction and you can go this way or that way. And many times as you stand still, life will send you a very specific message and direction to follow. But you got to pay attention. You got to be aware, alert, and awake to the messengers that are coming. So, we've all had them. Some of them make you giddy. Some of them just take your breath away. That you think, for example, many times I've had synchronicities through dreams. I would dream of meeting certain people, and the next day they'd show up in my life from I don't know where. And I was like, what? I can't believe this. And sometimes they're what we call sequential synchronicities, where one just leads after another, that you know that there's something operating here beyond coincidence or mathematics. The 2 ways synchronicities, in my opinion, happen is either by divine intervention, the spirit, your ancestors, something beyond us prearranges it for us. They say, okay, Ken's going to meet Jennifer now, and they're going to have this exchange, like marionettes, little puppets, and whoa. And other times you can actually create them through your intention and your emotions, through thoughts and through feelings. Very simply, the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, I know you know his work, many people know who he is. When you have a strong intention, you actually create an electrical field in your brain. When you have an elevated emotion attached to that intention, you create a magnetic field. And between the intention and the feeling, you have an electromagnetic arc, which acts like a Wi-Fi that goes into what we call the quantum field, or the field of infinite possibilities, and literally draws the synchronicity to you. So in some cases, we're actually the creator of the synchronicity, and other times it's by grace alone. It's given to us. Other than that, I don't know how they happen. Those are the only 2 ways I know. Now, I have a lot of friends who are scientific. They say, oh, no, it's just random, Ken. It's probability, statistics, computation, permutation. And I say, I don't think so. Based on how many years do you want to be alive? How many billions of years do you want to be around for that to happen through random action? And I discuss it in the book. When they ask me, what is the likelihood of this happening? I say, slim to none.
It's true. And it's, I actually would like for you to share, your recent near-death experience, because there are several synchronicities in that alone. And it's literally a miracle that you are here with us today. And I'd like you to share a little bit about that. And you've been awarded, as you like to say, extra innings, and I'm grateful, and the listeners are hopefully grateful as well. But can you tell us a little bit about what happened and the synchronicities that unfolded in that experience for you?
I'll attempt to do it without too much crying. So Judy and I, my wife of 51 years, we were out in California visiting my son in Southern California. And we took a late flight on a Wednesday evening. We were kind of tired. We got up early on Thursday morning. And as we usually do, we took a walk right after breakfast. And of course, in Southern California, we said, let's take a walk on the beach, which is about 10 miles away from where we were. We weren't right on the beach, so we had to drive there. And midway in the walk, I said to Judy, I don't feel that great. Maybe my blood sugar's low. Maybe we should go back to the condo and let me eat lunch. So we did. So we drove back to the condo. And Judy made a beautiful lunch, and I took one bite, and I had a heart attack. I woke out in a cold sweat. I had a pain I pray you never have in my chest and my back. I couldn't breathe. And I knew I was having a heart attack. I knew enough to know the symptoms. And my last words, not my last words, but I said to Judy as I was about to pass out, 911. And she got on the phone and she called. Well, as fate would have it, the first responders were down the block. Literally, they could have walked to my house. They were that close. So 5 guys show up, 3 EMTs and 2 paramedics, young guys, and they knew exactly what to do. Within 30 seconds, they knew I was in the middle of a myocardial infarct. And they said, let's roll. I remember them saying to the guy, let's get him there. En route, and they started treating me right on the spot. They had all they had an IV in me in 30 seconds. They were pumping me with different medications, and I was going in and out of consciousness. But on the way north to the hospital, and this is how fate works, there was a hospital much closer to where we were, 15 minutes away, the Scripps Medical Center. When they called, they said, you can't bring him here. We don't have any more room. We're on divert. You have to take him north to the county hospital. Well, little did I know the county hospital has the best cardio stem department in all of Southern California. They have the highest rating, the best trained people, even though it's a city hospital. But en route north, we hit a traffic accident and we come to a dead stop. And the guys said to each other, cross the highway, take them north on the south side. They risked their own lives to get me, because they knew if I didn't have time.
I have chills.
They got me to the ER, and I'll never forget being rolled in. I was in and out of consciousness, and I see 15 people waiting to take care of me. They had a team. They were on point. They were like seamless in what they would do. One guy was yelling out the directions. He was like the ringmaster. You know, he was a little Asian man, and he knew what he was doing, but everybody was running, doing what they did. And the first thing they do when you have a heart attack, folks, is they rip your clothes off. So you talk about humility. You're going to be in your baby suit very quickly, and they start hitting you with all kinds of IVs and stuff. And that in and of itself is quite a lesson in humility. But anyway, the first person to receive me off the gurney was a nurse, and she leans into me and grabs my head, and I think she's going to give me an adjustment. I'm saying, whoa, what's going on here? And she leans in and she says, we got your back. We're going to take care of you. And then I hear the voice of my own soul, because I thought it was her, and I asked her later on. She said, no, I never said that part because I didn't know. The voice said, Ken, relax. You're not going to die today. And that gave me a state of surrender. I just relaxed and was actually becoming a witness to what was going on. I was like watching Grey's Anatomy, but I wasn't inside my body anymore. I was watching them work on me. And within 1 hour, they stented me. Within a 1 hour, which is record time. They put 2 stents in a 100% blocked artery. Now, the doctor told me later, she says, you should have been dead. You shouldn't have even made it here with that kind of a closure. She said, but your age did you well, Ken. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, because you're in your mid-70s, your body develops what we call collateral circulation to your heart muscle. So when one artery gets blocked, you have these little tributaries that kept your heart muscle alive long enough for us to open it up. The next day, the nurse comes up to the ICU, and she says, you're not going to believe this, Ken, the same nurse. And she said, 5 minutes before you arrived, I had a precursor premonition that you were coming. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I said to my associate, my colleague, isn't it funny? People come from the East Coast, which is where I come from, out to the West Coast. They want to get away from the snow and the ice and the rain and the cold. And they want to come to Southern California, walk on a beach, get some sunshine, and wind up having a heart attack. And I rolled in. I was the next, within minutes, I was the next call. They telemetered me in. And then I gave her a copy of my book. We had a sacred contract, this nurse and I. And she said to me, you're not going to believe this, but I had a trauma in my life. And I haven't slept for 4 years. but I read your book last night, and I have such comfort from what you described that for the first time in 4 years, I slept through the night.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I come to
Wow.
find out the little Indian doctor who was actually what they call an interventional cardiologist. She was trained in New York. She had the highest rating, and she was expert at what she did. But she did make me promise her. She says, "No, Dr. Kenny, I know you like Deepak Chopra and you like Ayurvedic medicine, but you're going to have to promise me you're going to take 2 medicines for 1 year if I do this procedure, because if you don't, you're going to have another heart attack." So on the great protestation, I said, "Okay, I'll do it. Go." I was in so much pain, I didn't care what they did. And within 20 minutes of the stenting, everything cessated. The pain stopped. I mean, it was a miracle. I could actually feel they put fluids into your, they go through your groin, they snake it up, and they go through your heart. It's amazing. The technology, this is one of the parts of modern medicine I never want to get rid of. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is where medicine excels. And she was literally inside my heart and opened up both ends of this artery. She put 2 stents, one in the proximal and one in the distal end. And I could actually feel the River Jordan flowing.
Wow.
And I finally could take a breath, because the thing that happened to me, I couldn't breathe. So these poor COVID patients, I understand how terrified they must feel when the COVID-19 attacks the lungs ultimately, because when you can't breathe, you're not thinking about anything else but breathing.
Right.
Trust me on this one. I've done sweat lodges, and in a sweat lodge, that's the other thing that comes up. Your nose goes to the ground. It's so hot, you just want to get a little air. And you're so happy when they open the flap and you're out to get some air. So it's an interesting thing. People are so focused on nutrition for their health. They're focused on exercise and a lot of things. But, when push comes to shove, you can live weeks without food, days without water, but minutes without air. Minutes without air. And air is breath. Spirit, espiritus. Air is breath. And they tell us in the holy books that, and this thing called God, breathe the breath of life into man or woman, and we become a living soul. It's the first and last thing we do on this planet. When we come in, we breathe, and when we go out, we exhale. So breath is very, very important for people to understand health-wise. And there's a lot of people now doing breath workshops and teaching people how to reorganize their brain through breath. So there's a lot of pieces to this. In any case, I feel I was thankful before, but I'm beyond thankful now for these extra innings, however long I have. But the gift of this heart attack, I'll share this with the audience. It took away all my fear of death. I have no more fear. I went into a state of total surrender and a feeling that I can't even begin to describe, of peace and serenity came upon me and over me. And it was okay. I was okay if I lived, and I was okay if I should go. I had no struggling. I didn't bargain with God. I didn't say, save me, keep me. I was just total surrender. And I've never been in that state before. The ego does not want to surrender ever. It never wants to give up control. And having a strong ego, this was a real humbling experience for me. So that's my synchronicity. I went to the right hospital, met the right people at the right time. If I went to Scripps, even though it was closer, who knows?
Yeah. And, and some of this stuff you can't even begin to explain. It's magical, right? It's just like, think about it. What are the chances? Like, not only were the first responders just a block or so away, but then there would be a traffic accident and they'd be, have to make a decision to actually get on the highway going in the opposite direction and get you, and then be, think about that. It's just, our mind sometimes can't conceive all of that. And yet, for me, having my own near-death experience, or experiences, I've had more than one. It really is, when it's our time, it's our time. And what I so get from you, and you've always been this way since I've known you for the last 7 years, is that you and Judy love to live. I mean, you really love to live, and you live each day to the fullest. And yet here, it's like you went to another level in having this experience. And wow,
Yeah.
wow.
I went back to the first responders after I got discharged, and I gave them each a book. I went back to say thank you, and they had tears in their eyes. They said, no one ever comes back. We don't know who lives and we don't know who dies. But
Wow.
we didn't think you were going to live. And
Wow.
they filled up as I did, and they risked their own lives to do that. So
Wow.
I can't say enough about EMTs and paramedics. They didn't have to do it. They could have said, well, it's his time. I guess he's going to go. But no, they stayed right with me, and I'm thankful. That's all I can say. Beyond thankful.
I'm reminded of a story that you shared with me, and I'd like you to tell it to the audience today about the day that you were not supposed to be in your office practicing, and for whatever reason you were there, and the gentleman had come in. I believe he had an accident. Why don't you tell the listeners here, but talk about an amazing synchronicity story and how you were able to save someone else's life.
Yes. So the story goes is the following. My accountant called me and said, Kenny, we have to have all these papers photostated. And I have a home office. And so he said, you're going to have to get it ASAP. You better go down, photocopy everything and send it to me, as soon as possible. So my office was ostensibly, it was closed. It was dark. There was no lights on. I'm in the vestibule copying all these papers for the accountant that he needed. And a car pulls into the driveway. And I look through the blinds and I see this car pull up. And a gentleman gets out who was a police officer, had been a patient of mine for years. And he can't stand up. He gets out of the car and he's in what we call an antalgic position. He's bent over one-sided. And then a little voice says, well, it's my day off. Maybe I could pretend I'm not here. And then the voice of my soul said, hey, this guy needs help. Invite him in. So of course I listened to the voice of my soul. And I said, Mike, I opened the doorway and I said, come on in. I said, what happened to you? He said, well, Kenny, last night I was on a call. We had a motor vehicle accident, and I was in a car with two young men, two young boys, brothers. And I was sitting in this position in the back for an hour and a half holding one of them until we could get the jaws of life and extricate them from the car. And I was giving CPR to this one man, young boy, and he expired in my arms. And he said the shock of that, just my back, I couldn't straighten up after that. That was just such an emotional trauma to me. And he said, I just know why you could help me. So I got my car. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know if you were in or not, but I just went on impulse. And here I am. So I put him on my table. I do something called energetic healing, called attunement. And I just got quiet within myself, put my hand on his occiput, on his sacrum, rocked him, and he starts to cry like a baby. This is a tough guy. And he released all this emotional trauma of what it experienced. I mean, that's pretty close to death with this young man.
Yeah.
He gets back up, he cried, we talked a little bit. With that, another car pulls in the driveway. Again, the office didn't look open. I opened the door and it's a woman named Doris. And Doris and Mike meet momentarily. They just nod as Mike leaves, Doris walks in. And she has what we call torticollis, which is her neck is on her shoulder. She can't straighten her neck out. And I said, Doris, what happened to you? She said, oh, Dr. Ken, my best friend called me. Her sons were in a car accident last night. One of them's in critical condition and the other passed away. Well, lo and behold, that was the officer was the man who attended her best friend's accident in that moment. And I had to sit down. I said, Doris, sit down. I'm going to tell you something. I said, the gentleman who just left was the man who saved the other boy's life, and the other son died in his arms. I mean, and they had both been patients of mine for years, but they never met in my office. And they both were compelled to come to my office on the day off because life said, where can I get help? And they were told, come to Ken, because chiropractic adjustments are very stress reducing. They knew I could relieve the physical tension. But both of them were caused by emotional trauma heard the news of a friend and him, what he experienced. So here were three people, Doris, Mike, Ken, and this woman who I never met. We were all connected in the same event. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It was quite, I had to sit down for a minute and just shake my head to think, how could this happen? You know, I certainly did not consciously do this. This was not arranged by me thinking of them, but they were both told, they were both directed. So I always say life is intelligent, life can be trusted. If you pay attention, they had intuition to come see me.
Yeah, that's profound. And, I'd like you to share one more story, if you will. Your story when you met Wayne Dyer.
Oh, yeah, well, I met Wayne Dyer twice by synchronicity. Well, once by, not synchronicity, I was at a seminar, by 17 years apart, I met him. And I met Deepak Chopra and him also on the same day, 17 years apart. This is crazy when I think about it. So Wayne and I was at a seminar in Northern California for chiropractors. We had a master's circle meeting, and he was the keynote speaker. And I went up to him after his presentation, and I had read all his books. I was definitely a follower of his teachings. And I asked if I could take a picture with him, and he said, certainly can. So he puts his arm around me. He was much taller than I am. And he looks down at me, and I'll never forget the look in his eyes. He had beautiful blue eyes. He says, hey, Ken. I says, yeah. He says, do you know that you and I have one heart? I go, I could feel something. I didn't know it was that our hearts were connected, but if you're telling me that you're feeling that, I can agree with you because I really feel like I know you. I think I was related to him in another lifetime. 17 years later in Maui, Judy and I were there to attend a seminar with Ram Dass, who was also a spiritual teacher. I didn't even know Wayne lived in Maui. He lived there for many years. And we're walking along the beach, Judy and I, and about 50 yards ahead of me, I see him on a phone coming down the pathway. There's no one else there. And I yell out, Wayne! And he drops the phone. Thank God he dropped the phone because he lost the call. Now he was forced to speak to me. So we have this engagement. We spent 15 minutes catching up. I told him I never forgot what you told me 17 years ago. I was quoting his books to him. He knew I knew his work, okay?
Yeah.
And then we said goodbye. Well, about 25 minutes later, he comes running on the path looking for me. And he was so happy he found me. He says, I got to tell you this, Ken. I've been having some health challenges. And he used the word God. He said, and God told me you're going to help me. Will you come and take care of me? And that's how I became his chiropractor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Think about that. So you meet him 17 years prior. You and Judy are in Maui for a completely different reason. You don't even have Wayne on your mind. And poof, synchronicity. You meet and he's given a message and the rest is history. Wow. Wow. So now I'm intrigued, right? So can you talk to us about, what role or purpose does synchronicity play in our day-to-day lives?
I think we're constantly gyroscopically being guided to stay on our path. We have a tendency to deviate. We go on eddy currents, we forget, we go unconscious. But I think synchronicities are like gentle, hey, remember? Get back on the path, okay? Don't go unconscious on me. You got a mission, you got a purpose. This helps to keep us on a path of wherever we're supposed to be going. So I always tell people, just, pay attention to everyone and everything, because there are no strangers in our lives. Yeah. Strangers are friends we haven't met yet. That's how I perceive it. So even the guy pumping your gas or the person at the checkout counter in the supermarket, that's God in drag. That's God speaking to you. Listen, don't judge people by their station in life or their ethnicity or their outer coverings. Just get beyond that. See the soul in each and every person. Because in the end, we're all souls having a human experience. That's all it is, and we get skin encapsulated temporarily, but we're not skin encapsulated. We're all connected in the web. So just be mindful, be thankful. And again, many times you're told what to do and many times what not to do next.
How do you speak to fear? So if somebody has an encounter, you know, you're out and about and you have an encounter and it brings up fear, you know, like what do you say? What do you say? You know, what words of wisdom would you give to somebody that happens? You know, I mean, especially now, you know, people are afraid. They're afraid of contracting the coronavirus and, or transmitting it to somebody that they love that may be in a vulnerable state. How do we bridge the gap from fear to living our lives and getting to a place of love and joy, compassion, and kindness to ourselves and one another?
Well, I would say the only answer here is love. There are two ends, the spectrum. There are really only two emotions, fear and love, and we have a lot of stuff in between. So, fear is an acronym: false evidences appearing real. It's not real. Fear is a creation of the egoic mind. It's not of the soul. So the soul is not afraid of anyone or anything. If you're connected with soul, the soul has no fear, none whatsoever. It's ego. Anytime you're experiencing fear, it's usually your ego. There's some threat to the ego existence. With the coronavirus or any other so-called external threat, the tiger, it's because the ego fears oblivion. It fears dying, and the ego does die upon physical death. Your ego will dissolve, and so will your mind, so will your body, and so will your emotions. But who you are was, is, and will be, and you need to remember that. Who you really are was, is, and will be. In essence, you were never really born, and you will never die. You're really an aspect of life itself. Our true identity is in life, which means living in full expression. L-I-F-E. And fear, false evidences appearing real. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be mindful of, I'm not going to walk on a highway in front of a Mack truck. I'm going to pay attention because there are laws there at the 3D level of consciousness. There are certain laws that operate, and I can be the most spiritual person in the world, but if I walk in front of that Mack truck, I'm going to drop my body real quick. Yeah. So there's a time and a place to be cautious, to be mindful, to be present, but not to be paralyzed in fear. People today are like deers with the headlights. They don't know what to do next. They're just standing like totally immobilized, and that's not healthy. And it shuts down your nervous system. Fear will create what we call incoherence between the brain and the heart. And when incoherence happens, your whole nervous system will collapse, your whole endocrine system will cascade, and your immune system will definitely be vulnerable to any virus, bacteria, or anything else. They're opportunistic. They're just in us all the time. They're just waiting for us to lose our coherence. And that's why I'll put a plug in for Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. It's very important to keep a coherent field between your thoughts and your feelings. If thoughts and the feelings are lined up, the body doesn't suffer tension. The body goes into what we call in chiropractic subluxation or interference patterns. When you say, I know this, but, you have, I know what I feel, but the head says something else. Therein creates this dynamic of physical tension, and that will lower your immune system. And that's why I'm so sad about the fear level with the virus right now, because people are creating a depression in their immune system. Their T cells, their macrophages, they're all going down as the fear level rises. So I try to just remind myself that I'm not this body, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, I'm the witnessing presence. And everybody I see in my consciousness is really me, life in another body. So I'm meeting myself all day long.
It's so
and I'm
true.
not afraid.
Yeah. And I think, it's really powerful, is when we really are, we are in control. We are the creators of our lives. And, if our ego mind, has a thought that is not, uplifting, or we have the power to change the thought. And when we change the thought, we alter the feeling and what we feel in the moment. So I think, what I've experienced is that so many people are in a fear of the unknown or fear of what's going, what life is going to look like a week from now, 2 months from now, whatever. And if we allow our mind to keep going down that path, it's like a tsunami hit you. And so, and the best thing that we can do to rise above that is to stay in, a state of coherence and alignment with our true nature, which, as you said, is love. And so how do we express love, to one another? And especially we live in a society that is very connected. We're very physically connected. We shake hands, we hug one another. And now, we're in a space where who knows what that looks like going forward, and we don't have to buy into what the mainstream narrative may want us to think. If I choose to hug, in my life going forward, being respectful to those whom I want to hug, then I'm going to do that, and so it's finding our own, North Star and really being congruent with who we are at our core essence.
I agree. Everything you said is 100% true. You're wearing looks like a Hopi necklace, that beautiful turquoise. The Hopi people say there's north, south, east, west, and where I am in relationship to those 4 directions. Actually, there's 7. But the bottom line is stay in the present moment. As soon as you lose consciousness of right now and go into, say, the future, you're going to get anxious. We live in an ocean of uncertainty. We've always lived in uncertainty. Did I know I was going to walk on the beach and have a heart attack? No way. And if we lose the present moment and we go into the past, we try to unhappen what has happened, which is impossible. You go into depression. So if you want anxiety and depression to go away, stay in the now. Now, as a doctor, I would have patients come in and they, on a Monday morning, they say, hey, doc, last weekend, I had the worst migraine headache of my entire life. And they go into great detail, and I would listen. And I'd say one thing. I said, well, how are you feeling now? Oh, now I feel great. I said, okay, lay down. Let me check you. Because I'm saying to myself, can I go back into the past and unhappen what they had last weekend? No way. Although, according to Joe, we can go fast forward, fast back in the 5D reality. But I used to laugh because there's nothing I could do about what happened. There's no way I could, at least in the 3D world, I couldn't rewind. But people today are fretting. They're regretting or they're fretting. Regretting what happened and fretting what's coming. You know what? Let's show up and find out. My dad, in his older years, I used to go to him and bring him all these scenarios. I said, what do you think, Lou? You know what he said? We'll see. And it made me crazy. And my kids are coming to me and I'm saying, we'll see, because he was right. We'll see. Well, I don't know what we're going to do tomorrow and next week. Now, I love my wife dearly, and she's a weather nut. She's always checking the weather, what's going to be tomorrow, next week. And it never happens the way they say it's going to happen. One time we were going to take this vacation, and the hurricane was going to hit Bermuda. And I said, you know what? Let's cancel the trip. We'll go to Nantucket. Well, we went to Nantucket. What do you think the hurricane came? There's dead center in Nantucket. I said, that's it. No more plans based on the weather forecast.
That's funny. That's funny. And, you remind me of, when, for me anyway, when fear comes up for me, or, it's a reminder to be in the present moment, to go back into the now and to be grateful for what now provides. Right. And I think, one of the key practices that I have, and I know you share this too, is just gratitude, right? Grateful for what we have, and even grateful for the horrific experiences or the near-death experiences, because there are lessons and gifts in everything that happens. Life is happening for us, and it's for our highest good. It's actually not intended to be negative. Sometimes we perceive it that way.
I agree. An attitude of gratitude is the way to go. They say in all things, give thanks. In
Yeah.
all things, not just for so-called good things, but the so-called not so good things, because as you know, sometimes those not so good things turn out to be the blessings in disguise.
Yeah.
Your bombing incident in the World Trade, in the marathon incident years ago, put you on a whole different trajectory.
Absolutely.
You found yourself because of that. You found the real you. You went on your path. You probably may have not gone down that road if you hadn't had that experience. So yeah, we should not judge what happens, good, bad, or indifferent. We should be aware and stay in as much as we can in the present moment, and always ask yourself, so what's the gift here? I always say to myself, what's the silver lining here? Because there is always a reason. There's no randomness to life. Life is intelligent, life can be trusted, and so-called bad things happen, good things happen to bad people for a reason, you know, and bad things happen to good people for the same reason. We don't know. We don't
know.
It's humbling. You know, we have the power of choice. That's the only power. We can control nothing. Things wash up on your shoreline. You didn't necessarily author them, but maybe they're coming to you for release and blessing. And so just stay in the present moment and ask that question. What's the message here? What is the universe trying to tell me?
Great question. And are there any other practices that we can use to attract more synchronicities into our lives?
Yeah, there are 4 things you need to do. Basically, I give it in the book. And by the way, if you go on my website, you'll get this the user's guide. It says user's guide to categorizing and understanding synchronicities, the 765 formula for having more of them in your life. There are 4 things you should do if you want to have more synchronicities. Now, being of Irish heritage, half, I like to talk to people. You have to talk to strangers because they're really not strangers. You know, you have to engage people and listen to what they're going to tell you. So social interaction is one of the things you should do if you want to have more synchronicities. Pay attention to what they tell you. Start keeping a journal. Pay attention and write down the stories. You become more aware of it and begin to connect the dots for yourself. Look for the meaning. Pay attention to signs. Pay attention to license plates. Pay attention to everything in your environment because they're usually clues. They're helping to keep you, as I say, on your trajectory. And once you become aware of synchronicities, like anything else, you're going to have a lot more of them. Attitude of gratitude, appreciation, those are key. Openness of heart, you know, keep your heart chakra open, which opens your crown chakra, and you'll be downloaded. You'll get a lot of stuff coming in because we're not walking here alone, Jennifer.
No,
we have angels, guides, ancestors. They live with us, in us, and through us.
Powerful. You know, and I know that, so as we wrap up the interview here today, you know, one of the things we encourage, I know you're in the process of writing another book. So you've got your book, Synchronicity, which is available on Amazon. And you can get it today. But also really go to your website, which is dr.kenharris.com. And we'll post that at the end of this interview, so you can go there. But I believe you're asking folks to share and write and submit their synchronicity stories. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I plan to do a series of these books. By the way, the website is doctor, kenharris.com, not dr. That's another guy. There's so many Ken Harrises. That's another thing. When you Google me, there's 100,000 guys with this name from all over the world. Anyway, yeah, we're asking people on the website to register, and they'll get a free that 5-page download of the review of the whole book. They'll get a free monthly newsletter. And there's another place on the website, send us your story, because I have this idea. I want to do a series of these books like Chicken Soup for the Soul. You know how there's different subcategories? Synchronicity, How I Met My Spouse. Those are some great stories. You meet couples and you ask them, how did you guys meet? And the stories will blow your mind, how people have met each other and how they met and disconnected and then met again in life. Sometimes having other marriages and all kinds of situations. Or Synchronicity, How I Found a New Place to Live. Some of the stories, how people find out what, they found their home. How did they find it? Or Synchronicities, how I found a new job. So we're going to do a series of these books, I hope. And I'm getting stories now because the book has gone around the world through Amazon. It's gone to Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and people are sending me their stories and they're mind blown. And everybody's got a story. I love it because invariably when I meet someone and they ask me a question and I tell them a story, they say, "Hey, Doc, can I tell you mine?" I said, "Better than tell me, write it and send it in." So I'm collecting these now. So it could be 6 months or a year, but if people want to become an author and part of a compendium, and you got a great story that's life impacting and could help somebody else, send it in. And you can do that right on the website.
Fantastic. And again, I'll post the link right, append it to this interview so people can go there right away and sign up. Any last words of wisdom on the phenomenon of synchronicity? Anything else you want to share with us today?
Well, I would just say, keep an openness of your heart. Be thankful for everyone and everything that comes across your path in life. Don't judge anyone. Give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Again, in my consciousness, the whole world's my waiting room. Since I retired, I don't have an office anymore, but the world is my office. And as I said, strangers are friends I just haven't met yet. So that would be the last thing I would say to people. Don't be afraid of other people. In the end, I believe when we drop our bodies, we're going to come to realize there was only one of us anyway. That would be my message to the world. Stay aware, awake, and alert, and thankful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Ken Harris. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your stories of synchronicity today. And I look forward to reading your next book and staying in touch.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm so glad that we found one another after the 7-year hiatus. And thank you for the wonderful review of my book. Jennifer read my book and she posted a very uplifting and elevating review on Amazon, amongst many others. So that's another thing. If you read my book and you like it, please go back to Amazon and let them know. That way it stays up front. When you put the word synchronicity, the book pops up right away. So if you like it only, give me a good review.
Absolutely. And, for me, I didn't put it down. I literally opened it up and, it was just like, I couldn't wait to hear the next synchronicity story, right? And the next, it was really profound. And I had chills, I had chills while I was reading it. And so it's an easy read. It's an uplifting read. It's a fun read. So again, I invite you, Synchronicity. You can get it on Amazon, and thank you again.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate this opportunity.
You're welcome.